All right, let's jump right in. Today we're doing a deep dive into the art of happiness.
Yeah, it's such a cool mix. Buddhist philosophy from the Dalai Lama himself.
Right, like Western psychology from Howard C. Cutler, too.
Yeah, exactly. Two very different approaches to, well, the same goal, really.
Yeah, exactly. So we're kind of on a mission here, right?
Mm.
We're going to try to figure out what this book really says.
About how to be happy.
Yeah, like what does it really take?
And maybe bust some myths along the way.
Oh, I love myth busting. Okay, so let's start with this. Imagine winning the lottery. Millions of dollars, all your worries gone. Poof.
Oh, yeah. Happy dance time.
But here's the thing. Studies actually show that people's happiness after winning the lottery, like, it goes back to where it was before.
It's like there's this baseline of happiness. We all have one.
So it's like a thermostat.
Yeah, exactly. Like things can nudge it up or down for a bit, but we kind of always go back to our default setting.
So if money doesn't buy lasting happiness, then what does? This is where the Dalai Lama's view gets super interesting, right?
He's all about the internal stuff.
So not just like external achievements or possessions.
Yeah, he says those things matter, sure. But without the right mindset.
They don't really make a difference in the long run.
It's like having all the ingredients for an amazing cake, but not knowing how to bake.
Yeah, perfect analogy. So we have external factors.
Oh, yeah.
Dave?
Yeah, and internal ones. Our thoughts.
Yeah.
Beliefs.
And he says one of the biggest internal roadblocks to happiness is, get this, the comparing mind.
Oh, that's so relatable, though. I'm totally guilty of that.
Oh, me too. It's like I can't even enjoy a raise without checking what my coworkers are making.
Right, like you're happy. Until you find out someone else got a bigger one.
Ugh, yeah. It's like a never-ending treadmill of comparison, always wanting more.
And the Dalai Lama, he talks about this, right? Greed and excessive desire, always wanting more, even when we don't need it.
Okay, so how do we get off that treadmill then? Is this where that whole training the mind thing comes in?
Yeah, that's the key. Like, we train our bodies at the gym. Why not train our minds for happiness?
That's a good point. We put effort into so many other areas of our lives.
And the cool thing is, science backs this up. Our brains are, like, super adaptable.
Oh, right. He used that example of London cab drivers, right?
Yeah. They have to memorize this insane map of the city to get their license, like thousands of streets.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's like a mental marathon.
And studies found that their brains literally change. The hippocampus, the part that handles memory and spatial stuff, it actually grows.
Wow, their brains rewired themselves.
They did. It's called neuroplasticity, and it means our brain can change based on our experiences. So if our brains can change from learning a map, imagine what we can do if we're intentionally trying to be happier.
That is mind-blowing. But okay, I gotta ask this. If happiness is like our natural state, why do we even need to train our minds for it?
That's a great question. The Dalai Lama says that our natural joy can get covered up by negative stuff over time.
Like it's buried under stress, self-criticism, all that.
Exactly. And the goal isn't to create fake happiness. It's about uncovering the joy that's already there deep down.
I like that. It's like we're not chasing something outside ourselves, but tapping into something within.
That's exactly it. And to do that, we have to know the sources of happiness and how to get past the stuff that's blocking it.
Yeah, like that comparing mind we talked about.
For sure. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. We'll unpack more in the next part of our deep dive.
Ooh, can't wait. See you soon.
Welcome back to our deep dive.
We're really getting into some deep stuff here. It's making me rethink a lot of things.
That's the best part of this, right? Like challenging what we think we know.
Oh, yeah. So last time we were talking about that natural joy, like it's already inside us.
Right? And how that pesky comparing mind can block it.
Yeah, totally. Which brings us to this.
Compassion.
Ah, yes. A big one. When I hear compassion, I think like warm fuzzies.
Yeah.
Being nice to people.
It's more than that, though. The Dalai Lama, he talks about two types of compassion.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. One's based on attachment, the other's more
Genuine. Like true empathy.
Right. He said that love based on attachment, it can easily turn into like anger or hatred if things change.
It's like a flip of a coin, almost.
Yeah.
Because it depends on stuff outside of us.
Yeah, totally. But genuine compassion, it's about seeing everyone as like worthy no matter what.
Recognizing that shared humanity. We all want happiness. We all want to avoid suffering.
Okay, but this is where my brain goes to a weird place. Like, if we're wired to avoid our own pain, why would we want to be compassionate to others? Isn't that like inviting more suffering into our lives?
It's a good question. And the Dalai Lama, He says that real compassion isn't about wallowing in others' pain. It's more about connecting to a shared experience.
Oh, I see. So it's not about like making ourselves miserable. It's more about understanding that we're all in this together.
Exactly. And when we approach suffering from that perspective, it can actually be a source of strength, even connection.
Okay, I'm starting to see that. But still, like being compassionate to everyone, that's a tall order.
No doubt. It's not easy. But the Dalai Lama says it's not just some, ideal.
Yeah.
It's essential for our own well-being. He even talks about how even, dictators, people like Stalin.
Those guys, they didn't seem too compassionate.
Right. But he says they likely suffered a lot too, from insecurity, fear, even with all that power.
So even those who reject compassion, they end up paying a price for it.
Yeah, that's his point. Their actions might be about control, but underneath, it's often isolation and fear.
Wow. Makes you think about all the conflict in the world. Maybe it all comes back to this lack of compassion,
That's a deep thought. The Dalai Lama really emphasizes that recognizing our interconnectedness, it's not just a nice idea. It's actually good for us.
Okay, I'm sold. But how do we actually do that? How do we actually get more compassionate?
Well, he talks a lot about learning, really understanding how compassion helps and how the lack of it hurts.
So seeing real-world examples of it?
Yeah. He also talks about specific techniques visualizing ourselves in someone else's shoes, feeling their pain.
Oh, right. Like Tom Lin, right? I know we're saving that for another deep dive, but...
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. But basically, you visualize taking on the suffering of others.
Wait, really? Their actual pain?
It's more symbolic, but the idea is to connect with that suffering and cultivate empathy.
Okay, that's intense. But let's switch gears for a sec. Let's talk about changing those deep-rooted habits, the thoughts that get stuck in our head.
Oh yeah, that's the hard part, right? We know we should change, but...
Actually doing it, that's a whole other story.
Especially when it comes to those tough emotions.
Yeah.
Anger, anxiety, all that.
Ugh, yeah, they feel so hard to control. But the Dalai Lama, he had some good advice about that, right? How do we actually deal with those when they pop up?
He gives this 5-step process for change. Learning, conviction, determination, action, and effort. It's not just about wishing things were different.
So taking real steps to change.
Exactly. He also talks about urgency, how when there's a crisis, people spring into action. Remember, after 9/11.
Oh, yeah, how everyone came together so fast.
So it's about bringing that same kind of urgency to, our personal growth.
Easier said than done, though, right? Life gets in the way.
Totally. He compares it to physical training. It takes time, consistency.
Right. And he mentioned those antidotes, right? Specific things to combat negative emotions.
Yes. Patience to fight anger, kindness to fight hatred, generosity to fight greed.
Like a mental toolkit. I love that. But what about when those emotions are already there? When you're in the middle of feeling angry or anxious?
That's where the practice comes in. He says early intervention is key, catching those feelings early on.
So being aware of those, first signs of anger or whatever?
Exactly. He says to ask yourself, is this anger justified? Is this worry helpful?
Oh, that's good. Taking a step back to see things more clearly.
Yeah. And he stresses patience again. He even gives a specific meditation for it. We can talk about that more next time.
Ooh, yes, please. More tools for the toolkit. But before we move on, I want to go back to that thing about, even people who seem ruthless, maybe they're struggling too.
Right. We never know what someone else is going through. Maybe that anger is coming from a place of hurt.
It's a good reminder to choose compassion over judgment, right?
Absolutely. Everyone's fighting their own battles. And maybe, just maybe, a little kindness from us can make a difference.
That's a powerful thought. Okay, so let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive into some more practical stuff for dealing with those emotions. All right, we're back. Wrapping up our deep dive into the art of happiness.
It's been a lot to take in. So much good stuff.
For sure. So before we finish up, let's circle back to the practical stuff, dealing with those tough emotions.
The anger, anxiety, all that. How to actually handle them.
Exactly. We were talking about that whole early intervention thing, right? Catching those feelings before they blow up. But how do we actually do that?
Well, it starts with noticing, those little changes in how you feel, even in your body. Maybe your heart starts racing, or you start clenching your jaw.
Oh, those are good signs. Little red flag.
Right. And once you see those flags, the next thing is to pause. Don't just react. Take a breath. Give yourself a second.
I like that. It's like hitting the pause button on a movie.
Yeah. You get to choose how the scene plays out. And during that pause, You can ask yourself those questions the Dalai Lama talked about, like, is this anger really justified? Is this worry actually helping?
It's like taking a step back and being like, wait a minute, is this even real?
Right. Because a lot of times those negative emotions, they come from like messed up thinking or expectations that are just like way too high.
Yeah, I can see that. So by pausing and questioning those thoughts, we can kind of calm things down before they get out of hand.
Exactly. And that's where patience is so important. Remember that meditation the Dalai Lama mentioned?
Oh, yeah. The one for like specifically building patience. Tell me more about that.
So you find a comfy spot, close your eyes, focus on your breath, then think of something that normally makes you impatient, like being stuck in traffic or waiting in a long line.
Oh, yeah, those are the worst.
Right. But instead of getting all worked up, try to visualize yourself staying calm. Like imagine yourself breathing deeply, being patient, not letting it get to you.
It's like practicing a new reaction in your head.
Exactly.
Right.
And the more you do it, the stronger those pathways in your brain get. So it becomes easier to actually be patient in real life.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Like we're actually rewiring our brains for happiness.
We are. And this connects to another big idea in the book, self-esteem. The Dalai Lama, he was kind of surprised by how much self-hatred there is in Western culture.
It's true, though. We're always so focused on our flaws, like all the things we're not good at.
And he says we need to change that. Real self-confidence isn't about like being arrogant or denying our problems.
It's more about like accepting ourselves, warts and all.
Yes. Knowing our worth, but not being like conceited about it.
That's a good distinction, like finding that middle ground.
Right. And he says this kind of self-esteem, it's really important for both happiness and compassion.
Because if we're always putting ourselves down, it's harder to be kind to other people too.
Exactly. It all comes back to that idea of interconnectedness.
Right, like we're all in this together.
That's a big part of the art of happiness, I think. It's not about finding some like isolated bliss. It's about living in a way that recognizes how connected we all are.
Yeah, like our own well-being is tied to everyone else's.
And that by being kind, both to ourselves and to others, we're actually making the world a better place.
Wow. This deep dive has been pretty amazing. We talked about training our minds, being compassionate, and that whole idea that we're all connected.
It's been great exploring this with you.
And with you too, listeners. Hopefully this has given you some things to think about and, maybe inspired you to keep working on your own happiness.
It's a journey, right? A lifelong process of learning and growing.
And every step we take towards more understanding, more compassion, it makes a difference. Not just for us, but for everyone.
So until next time, keep searching, keep learning, keep diving deep.
Thanks for joining us.